know this world has gone insane. It is absolutely no secret. But tonight, Saturday night, you are about to experience the true measures of what that insanity can bring you. Tonight, you are about to see Bald and Bonkers, the one-of-a-kind show that delves deep into the world with no holds barred. Now, meet your hosts, Dakota Franson, specialist of the strange, and Christopher Mule, the UFO fanatic. Now, give it up, and let's see what these two idiots can bring you.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Well, I thought you wanted me to start this show.
Well, you do it then, on you go.
Anyway, welcome to Bald and Bonkers, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dakota Franson. I'm here with Christopher Mole. And this is a show that my own mother called me a lucky son of a bitch for being able to pull off. Tonight we have Barry Fitzgerald from Ghost Hunters International to help talk about his new book, The Deceptions of Gods and Men. And Barry, once again, I would love to say thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for having me on. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, honestly, Barry, thank you for coming on. And guys, this is the book that I powered through in 3 days. Please buy it. All the links below.
In the description below.
Yep. So, Barry, can I ask you, how did you come about to write this book? How did you get into this field of the UFOs? Because I know you do the Ghost Hunters International. How did you get into the subject of UFOs and our little green friends?
Well, I've always had an interest in that, but I tended not to restrict myself to just the paranormal. Because for a long time I have seen that there was this thread of commonality that wove its way through many of the fringe research fields.
Yeah.
And having my own experiences within ufology, and both seeing and having interactions with said beings, I was able to analyze those encounters and break them down and see our strengths and their weaknesses, and that I felt was a powerful place to be, and it was something then that within the Deceptions of Gods and Men, we wanted to bring this forward, not as a stick to beat someone with, to say do not go down this particular path of investigation. Rather, it's a cautionary book which asks the researchers to challenge what's coming through the veil. Yes. Don't accept the first thing that comes along, and the reasons for that, of course, we'll probably talk about tonight.
Yeah, it's honestly it's a fascinating read. I mean, I was shocked. I mean, there's a place near me, it's the Fairy Tree Inn that you mention in the book, which I was shocked. It's only like 36 miles from me. And I found a bit in the book really interesting. The bit that I found was about how the locals thought that someone had changed the minister when he died in the hull for like a duplicate and took him away to the fairy realm. But really, what do you think actually happened there at the start of the book? What do you honestly think happened to him?
It really is hard to know. There is a lot of documentation that does support that actually occurred, and there was a prediction that was made, where the minister himself is reportedly said that during, I believe it was a wedding, that he would make his appearance there, and if someone was courageous enough that they were to throw an iron dagger over his head, that would mean that he would then stay in this reality and not have to return. But the problem was, you see, that he got involved in this suppose broken record, which we see throughout human history, and it's a record which tells a story of two opposing sides fighting against each other and humanity is caught in the middle. And we don't have to go too far. We can see that within the Bible context as well, between angels and demons. We see this, and humanity is caught in the middle. Now, this story does just not start or end there. It's something that passes all the way back through right into Babylon.
Yes,
and of course the minister himself, he, and out of his good intentions, decided that he was going to try and broker a peace between these two factions within the fairy realm, which were known as the Seelie and the Unseelie.
That's right.
The Unseelie had great contempt for the human race, and he went to their particular area, and he was told, "You should not have done this." And his punishment was either that he was to be killed, or he was to stay with them for the rest of his life. Yeah. And so he decided that he was going to go with them. And it was alleged that the remains of a body was found on top of the dunes, and was then buried in the church graveyard down below, which was his parish, I might add. And but some believe that that is not his remains, that's in the grave at all. But it was an interesting tale, but something that we also see within other traditions around the world are these doorways that open up.
Yes.
And people can slip through, and many unintentionally, and some never come back. And even within the modern context, we don't have to look too far to see some type of similarity within the United States of America and the work of David Paulides.
That's right. Yeah.
In 411.
Yeah.
The idea that these people, majority of these people that disappear, these clusters of people that disappear, the majority of which disappear in boulder fields.
Mm-hmm.
And this connection with rock that we see right across the fringe research fields is this connection with rocks, and the various entities that come through and appear by using this particular material. I
found that actually you bring up missing 411, because I found that there's a chapter, there's a page in your book, and it's basically, it talks about this, whoever he is, extraterrestrial that comes for dinner, right? And he makes a comment. Yes. Don't worry, I won't eat you. Yes. Don't worry, I won't eat you. As if that's something that maybe his kind do, because then you talk about the people that just disappear and never are found again. They're getting eaten.
Yeah, and there is a certain amount of resources that has to be used when these particular entities materialize into this reality, and there are certain laws in which they have to maintain to remain here. Yes. And if you're materializing into a body that size, you're going to have to maintain it through the use of food and water and everything else to remain here. So it does beg the question, on something that we raise in the book: at what particular circumstance would you consider eating someone else? It really made us question who or what these things really were.
Yeah, I mean, you think about all the people that disappear each year; they just vanish. I mean, are they going through like a doorway to another dimension, or are they deliberately lured away to that dimension for dinner? It's actually very frightening. It really is. But I'll hand you over to Dakota here, because I think he's got a big, long list of questions for you.
Actually, yes. Going back to the minister, who they believe the body that's there now is that of a changeling. What would it be about? Part of the book where it says that if someone were to throw an iron dagger above his head, what do you think would it be about that particular item, either the materials of the dagger, or because you speculated it may have been some sort of electrical conductor, but like what sorts of, how am I should I put this? What is it about that instance would help him stay in this reality, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, iron in itself has always been seen as something within folklore mythology, has always been seen as something which aided us in our defense against these things that come through the veil. And within Scotland and Ireland, it's well known that if you want to protect your children before baptism, you put an iron poker across the crib. If you wanted to protect your animals from mutilation of the fairy, you put an iron horseshoe above the door to protect the animals in the barn. Mutilation, missing time, mischievousness, abductions, the high level of deception is not just something that happens within the fairy realm. It's also something that we see, and a similarity of a long list which connects them all together, where we find the old gods, the jinn, the UFOs.
Yes.
They're all tied together. But the one major thing that ties together, especially from it comes as a shock to a ufologist, is the Greys are afraid of those who wear iron.
Yes.
They're afraid to come near them. And the reasons for that is because they can't shut the body down. Now, when we go back far enough, we see this crossover from the fairy realm and the jinn, and it morphs its way into the incubus and succubus areas.
Yep.
9 times out of 10, they attack women more so than men. They wait, and this is coming from my own research, they wait until the women enter their monthly cycles, and many of them become anemic. The iron has failed at that particular moment in time. That's when they strike. So from that particular perspective, we're now starting to see, again, this common factor in which we now see that those ancient Semitic demons now slipping into the list of these multifaceted masks that have continued to elude us throughout the eons of time. But when we strip the mask away and we start following it by the phenomena in which it interacts with us, that's when we're able to track them right back to the earliest writings of the human species.
Wow. It's fascinating that with the blood and the iron. I mean, is a question for you, right? Who do you think these entities actually are? Who in the book it says that they come from a realm of darkness and nothingness, and there is like a male and a female type, and because I read that in the book, but there is nothing there. So why do you think they come to our reality to manipulate us if they can't take that back to their reality because they've got nothingness?
For that, we need to understand who we are, and for that, we need to understand that this particular meat sack that we have, the body, it contains a soul and a spirit. Yes. Now, in today's society, we use the term soul and spirit, and it becomes very interchangeable. That is not the case. We shouldn't do that. Our ancestors didn't do that. They recognized that there were two separate aspects to us. So the spirit itself is here and inhabits this particular body, but at point of death, it's gone. It goes where it needs to return to. We didn't concentrate too much on that particular aspect. What we were interested in was the soul, because the soul itself deals with it really deals with the darker, more animalistic aspects of who we are, of this, I suppose, overall trinity. And it thrives in our lowest energies, and it deals with our wants, our needs, and our lusts. Because its job is to keep us alive as long as possible for the spirit to experience. Now, when that I should address as well that all psychic phenomena are signatures of the soul. So the idea of remote viewing, prophecy, all of that stuff belongs to the soul. That's a signature of the soul. It's not a signature of the body. It's the soul. And when we have a bad experience, when we have a bad encounter, there are occasions when
Yeah.
some abductees and things or experiencers will remark that they've received gifts from these beings,
Yes.
that they've now got this aspect where they can see certain things in the future that are coming, and things like that, and various other psychic abilities. But we challenge that in the book, because we believe that this is not a gift. This is actually our soul stepping forward to the plate to make sure
Yes.
that we don't end up in that situation again. So it's a way to guide us, the entire Trinity, through that particular weave. Now, at point of death, as I said, the spirit, it leaves and it goes to where it's going, but the soul can linger with the body for days, to weeks, to months, before it finally returns to where it needs to be. And where it returns to is that place of nothing.
Yes.
Absolute nothing. And we've got many testaments to that particular theory, which we list in the book as well, and many different sources that refer to this place of nothing, this ocean of blackness, in which nothing exists except these things, which are very animalistic almost in their ways. And they wish to get back to here. They wish to get back to the light, the world of light.
Yes.
And if we open that door, they can come back.
It's quite.
That in itself can cause an issue, because if we're not aware of that, if we don't understand the signals that are coming from our own Trinity to a situation, well, then we can end up in a serious problem.
That is so interesting, because I was actually reading the book and I was actually thinking about this. I mean, there's ancient mythology. Your soul goes to this, and people had to be buried with like a coin in their mouth for the to sail across this black nothingness water, and in it there is a serpent. It makes you wonder, because if you go back far enough to Adam and Eve and stuff like that, there was the serpent, snake, and the Adam and Eve. It makes you wonder, is this who they really are? Is this what they really are? There's some type of serpent waiting to collect the soul, to take it back to the nothingness.
You see, the serpent itself, it has originated through serpentine worship, which predates Christianity and goes back thousands upon thousands of years.
Oh yeah.
But the particular culture that ended up in Europe, Scotland and Ireland, of the Neolithic culture, they were really enthused by people coming across from Syria and Babylon, and they built our passage chambers. Now, the reasons that we know that is because we have uncovered, in 2016, we uncovered graves in County Antrim, which we trace back to the Middle East. And this was coming at a time of the Neolithic. We're not saying that they were coming across in the hundreds of thousands. There was just this movement coming across to these particular areas of the world. And the ecosystem was very, very different then. But what they did is that they brought these stone structures with them. The idea of these stone mounds, again, there we're back to the stone. Now, from an Irish perspective, we have to appreciate these stone mounds within our folklore, because we see those as the place of the Sidhe. Now, in Irish traditions, we believe that the Sidhe were the fairy, but that's actually not quite the case, because within the term Banshee, we have woman of the Sidhe. People would say that's woman of the fairy. That's actually not the case. It's woman of the mounds. They were coming through the mounds to get to here. And the mounds themselves were the doorways, the ancient doorways for the Neolithic. And tracing that particular entity, the Banshee, we've been able to find a distinct similarity with another entity that appeared in cuneiform tablets in Babylon, the same place that the people came from who built the stone chambers. So we have this direct line leading us all the way back to Babylon, and this connection to stone. So when we start to understand the stone connection, we see that the mounds within the Nordic traditions, they tended, what tended to happen is that the dead themselves were brought to an island known as Nostrand,
Yep.
and they were left on the shore, and it was known as an island of the dead. We have got several of those here in Ireland, and it was believed then that as the soul broke free from the body, it went through a state of metempsychosis in which it changed its appearance. Now, bear in mind, before it returns back to the world of nothingness, it brings back with it all the knowledge that it experienced through life. So it brings that back to the other side, which is the void, which is now the seat of the global consciousness. The great Akashic records lies within that darkness. And when the souls went through that state of metempsychosis, for the Nordic countries and also down into Scotland and Ireland, they transformed into a serpent.
Yes.
So it was part of us almost that transformed into the serpent and went back to this other place, this place of nothing. So when they appeared on the doorways, they appeared as serpents. And those serpents had access to the Akashic records, the global consciousness. They had access to the knowledge. That's why we see the serpents and knowledge connected today within symbolism. That's where it originates from.
Before I hand you over to Dakota, it makes you wonder if this place of nothingness, right, is really there. I'm going to use a term here, is really there for like data to be stored before it goes to the Akashic records.
Well, that in itself, what we're proposing is that the Akashic records is that place.
Right.
It is that darkness. During the Skoll experiments, which happened in England, these series of really, really enlightening experiments of seance, old style seance, they made contact with a being on March the 6th in 1998, and it was called Sharoness. And that entity admitted that it came from a dimension of nothingness, and Robert Monroe also commented on that particular place in which there was a great void, a great ocean of darkness, which during his OBE travels, which he was exceptionally proficient, he had to cross. And he said, if you crossed it fast, if you were speedy about getting across it and wanting to get across, you attracted attention. He said the trick was to slowly make your way across this void. And he said it felt like, it felt like you were being bitten, and scrabbed, and marked as you were trying to get across, and these things were trying to attract attention or trying to attach themselves to you. But he also gave out this fantastic warning when he came back. He said, we need to be very, very careful of this place, because by doing out-of-body experiences and astral projection, we can attract those things back to here. And he said that is a real serious problem for us.
That's fascinating. Go on.
I was just taking a moment here. A lot of comparisons you make in the book also are attributed to Catholicism. It goes to make you speculate with all these conspiracies circulating, the serpent imagery, the statues of Lucifer, even the telescope at the Vatican being called Lucifer, if they fall under these same paradigms. I just add that. They
do, yeah. And that's something to escape this particular mindset of the distinct opposing forces. We need to step out of that. We can no longer take part in, well, I'm on this side or I'm on that side. we can't do that anymore. We need to step back and take control of who we are. But anyway, that's a different rabbit hole altogether.
That's the truth.
I mean, I just find it so fascinating, these entities, how they can manipulate, how they can play different people. And I found it very interesting in the book about how these entities latch on to people, but when that person dies, it's as if there was, I think there was a, was it the school, was it that it was some experiment where the entities were all waiting to get that soul. They wanted that soul. They all wanted it. They were waiting for it. It's like when one person dies, that entity tries to find someone else to latch onto. It's if it's in the shadow. Who's the shadow being? Because you hear the stories, and obviously the ghost hunting and stuff, and the ghost hunting community and that, they'll talk about shadow beings. Is this? Is that who they are? What's it? Because
yeah, primarily when you start dealing with this particular phenomenon, we have to recognize that particular aspect of shadow. Now, for us to detect shadow in its truest sense, the best piece of equipment that we have is ourselves. Our body has an exceptional gift of discernment that we need to reconnect with. And there were laboratory tests that were done of biofeedback tests, and they had shown that when a person was connected up to a computer that selected random photographs, there was nothing to do with people. There was no telepathy involved or mind reading or anything like that. And the computer was selecting random photographs of kittens, of puppies, and children laughing and things like that. As we continue to watch that, our skin resistance lowers because we don't detect a threat. But when the computer selected a random photograph of a horrific car accident, our skin resistance shot up. It did not like what it was seeing. Now, it was interesting as the experiment continued that over the course of the photographs being shown, the body started reacting milliseconds before the computer selected the random photograph of the car accident. In other words, the body at some stage was now detecting what was about to happen. So that in itself really puts the human species into a new level, if you like. But when we walk into a property, for instance, 75% of real estate is sold on feeling. We walk into a property, there's 4 white walls, and we go, oh yes, this is nice. I like that. This feels really nice. What is that feeling that we're picking up on? Or likewise, we can walk in and go, oh no, I don't like this. We leave and we don't even put in a bid. So what is that we're doing? That, I believe, is part and parcel of how we are discerning this particular phenomena, because our shadows, our souls, utilize our body's fight or flight.
yes,
It's like a pair of dowsing rods. People think that the dowsing rods are magic. It's not the dowsing rods. There are small movements within the body that moves the dowsing rods themselves. It's what we're picking up is now being reflected in the dowsing rods. It's an extension of us. Likewise, the body is an extension of the soul. So when we walk into a property and suddenly our hair goes up in the back of our necks and our fight or flight is now kicking in, that's our shadow, our soul telling us, beware, there's another shadow here.
yeah,
And that's a very powerful thing to understand. But in today's society, we also have chemicals and food products that can inhibit that fight or flight response. Refined sugar is horrific. It can absolutely destroy the body's fight or flight. So for the likes of groups who are meeting, for instance, in a fast food restaurant before they go to either a serious investigation or someone's private home, they're maybe having a large soda drink of whatever particular make. Effectively blinded their body going into a situation in which they need all their senses.
that is very interesting. You say that. Dakota, do you want to, this one?
actually, yes, that brings up something that I've been wondering about since reading your book, because a lot of people we've come across who got into channeling sessions, got into these trances. Afterwards, they all claim that they have had these intense sugar cravings. And after reading your book, I was like, is this some sort of, well, how the body would try to coerce you, for lack of a better word, to fulfill your any nutrients you're lacking? Is this some sort of safety measure, or what are your thoughts on that?
What can happen is that for someone who's sensitive, that the sugar itself can become an anesthetic to the sensations. So it quietens everything down. The problem is that after a period of time, we start to get addicted to that, and we consume more and more and more, which becomes unhealthy for us.
Yeah.
But likewise, when you're coming out of a session such as that, as what you had pointed out, Dakota, in which people have very intense, say, communications with something, and they come out and crave something sugary, that to me raises alarm bells, because I would be asking, wait a minute, if this is happening at this early stage, you may have an attachment which has now driven you to want the sugar to shut down your body's ability to detect it.
Well, crap.
Bugger. It's a hamsters, because that's exactly what happens to us. That's exactly what happens that's exactly what happens. We'll do our sound things that we were talking about before. Mm-hmm. Something will come through either me or it will come through Ham.
Yeah.
And then after that, the first thing I look for is like a Mars bar, something with high concentration sugar. And it's like, it's as if I don't want anything with like grain in it or stuff. I have to have sugar. It's sugar, sugar, sugar. And then after it, you're sitting there and you think to yourself, says, oh, I feel nice and all that. But you can't really sense nothing, because it's like all the doors are closed.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, then, that raises a lot of concern about my experiences, but okay.
Yeah. Another thing, Barry, I would like to get into, it was something that I found very interesting. There was in the book that you were talking about, you were doing a spirit investigation at a location, and you looked up and you seen two figures, right?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And then you held up your camcorder and you looked through the viewing screen, but there was only one person there. But then you looked up and there was two people there. See, the same thing happened to me with a UFO sighting that I seen the UFO. I was like, oh my God, it's huge, it's big, it's floating above the clouds and that. Yeah. I tried to video it, but there was nothing there. But when the video was analysed and all the contrast was changed in it, you could clearly see it. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, there is a reason that a majority of this particular phenomenon will not appear on cameras, because the camera will show what's really there rather than what we are interpreting what's there. And that particular occasion, I was on top of a hill, and I was spending the night on one of the Neolithic passage chambers, which predates the Great Pyramids of Giza. And that particular night, 3 people had already appeared on the second chamber behind me, and I was clearly able to see them. They wore primary colors, fleece tops, and they were walking with large walking sticks, wooden walking sticks, and they were late teens. That's the details that I was able to pick up. It just wasn't something I saw from the corner of my eye. I could clearly see them. Now, I was on top of a mountain where I could see clearly 360 degrees, 6 miles in any direction. And within 2 minutes, these people had vanished. There was no trace of them. And I thought, wait a minute, is that other passage chamber? Is there a chamber in it? Or I thought it had originally collapsed. So I went down to see, and sure enough, the chamber had collapsed. These people had simply vanished from the face of the earth. And I couldn't explain it. I phoned my wife and I said, you never guess what the hell happened. And I continued to work then on the particular passage chamber I was on. and I was working with a camera because the sun was already setting at that stage, and what I didn't want to do was to have a blasted flash that kept going off every time I took a photograph, because the locals would see that from miles away and they'd wonder what on earth is going on top of the hill again. So I was working with that, and I happened to look up, and there were two people walking away from me. Now, my peripheral vision is perfect, and why I didn't see these people, I have no idea. And I had binoculars on as well, and I lifted the binoculars and looked at them, and I said, "Wait a minute, why am I only seeing one?" And I set the binoculars down, and I thought, "I've broken the blasted binoculars." And I lifted the camera up, and the camera through the viewfinder, I could only see one. Now, these two people walked through a flock of sheep, and the sheep never moved. And I found that very, very unusual. They were heading toward a cliff face. And I lifted the camera and I took the shot. And I have the photograph. And one person appears on it, the second did not. And I thought to myself, is it just double vision that I'm looking at? What's going on here? But then I realized that the second person was shorter than the first, was wearing a slightly different colored jacket than the other. So it was not double vision. This was something else. And I became aware at that particular moment in time, this is why they do not like cameras, because the camera is showing me what's really there rather than what they want me to see. And we tend to see this type of phenomena, the observer effect within ufology as well, is very, very keen there, where you've got, say, four people looking at the same UFO and seeing four different things. They link into our conscious brain. It's called the hook and bait, which I mentioned in the book. And the light itself, this pulsating light, is the hook. And whenever we take it and accept that, usually what tends to happen is that we have about a 20-second window. And the body itself, after the 20 seconds, then it tends to be moved toward that theta band rhythm, brain rhythm.
Yes.
Because that's the rhythm in which we go into deep meditation. That's the rhythm that hypnosis would happen. That's also the rhythm that you would tend to find false memory being placed. And false memory, as known by the psychiatry, false memory does not happen just willy-nilly. They have to see something. The person has to see something initially to engage that particular phenomena that can happen. But within the first 20 seconds tells the nature of that particular phenomenon, irrelevant of whatever mask it takes, whether it be a little tiny child, whether it be a UFO or a grey or whatever the case may be. If our body reacts within the first 20 seconds and the fight or flight begins, that is the nature of the phenomena, and we should adhere to that, and not accept what comes along, because after that, then we're sold whatever comes along.
Yeah, I've actually met people that seen the same UFO but described it differently. They were together, and one was over there, and the other one was over there, and they're like, "I seen that," but their story was totally different from their story.
There is a distinct conscious connection which they manipulate very, very easily. Now there are nuts and bolts objects that can appear. There are physical beings that can and do appear. Yeah. But we also see that phenomena within the seance rooms, and we've seen that within school. We've seen it within the Livermore laboratories in the United States. These arms would suddenly appear, and there was nothing after the elbow.
Yes,
and
I found that. Yeah,
Skull and Livermore laboratories was that Skull was done in darkness, and Livermore laboratories was done in daylight. And yet we were told in the seance rooms, we're told, "Oh, it has to happen in darkness. The spirits don't like it." BS. They're selling us a black line, and because they can make things appear in daylight and do.
Well, it's weird you say that, because in your book you're doing this. You were telling us about the scroll experiment, how this guy had got a box and he locked it, and he went out. He went away and left the box, They did the experiment and they turned the light on. They opened the guy came back and they unlocked it, and somebody had put something in the box.
That's
I
right.
mean,
Yeah.
that's
And there
that's
was even
crazy.
camera film, 35
Yeah.
millimeter film, with writing that appeared on
Yeah.
on film. Yeah.
And that's fascinating. I mean, how is that possible? You talk about like poltergeists and stuff like that. They can move things through buildings. They can move things about the house, because I know someone that's got like a haunted house, and they'll set their car keys down, and then they'll lose them, and then they'll find them up the stairs, and they're like, how's that possible? It's as if the spirit or the entity, whatever it is moving it basically about.
Now, here's something to consider in regards to that particular phenomenon. It's something that I've been working with my research buddy Stephen Mira from the UK, and it would seem that the research that we've done is that, for instance, say this particular pen, I set it down on the desk and it vanishes and it appears in the bedroom. That pen is not the original pen that's left back. It's a copy. And that copy helps create the doorway between us and them. They need two copies. Or sorry, the original and a copy. So the copy is sent back, and they don't get it completely right when they're leaving things back. And so that in itself is a copy, which helps open the doorway. And a lot of these things, when they're returned, a lot of strange phenomena continues.
Yes.
Because the doorway remains open because of this link.
I find that fascinating, because there's a couple of poltergeist in the United Kingdom. I think one's is it the Enfield haunting that actually happened at, whereas the knives would be downstairs in the drawer. And then all of a sudden someone here would hear something up the stairs clanking. So they would go up the stairs and there was the knife stuck in the middle of the bed.
Poltergeist,
so that's the copy.
Phenomenon is very, very similar to this phenomenon in its core, in that the moment you stop being afraid and the moment you start questioning it, it loses its oomph. And shortly after that it will start to back off. And this particular phenomenon I have found, when you challenge it, when you say, hold on a second, I want to clarify something here and go back. If an entity is true and is pure for the benefit of the human race, it will not mind the question. But when there are many, many times when you question this phenomena and you've caught it out, it will clear off. That speaks volumes. That is deception at its highest.
Yes, it makes you want.
The human race has this unique ability when we're dealing with these particular things from the other side, that they will come forward and they will give us 3 lies and 1 truth. So what do? We ignore the 3 lies and hook on, and we accept that 1 truth. Why do we accept anything? If it continues to lie to us, it's going to lie again and again and again.
I mean, it fascinates one with the moving object. It makes you wonder, is there somewhere in some realm with all these items, like for instance that pen you're putting up, is there somewhere in like an alternate reality, in a different dimension, where there's just a big pile of things that have went missing and disappeared, and what do they do with them? I mean, Sky Remote. I mean, what do they do with them?
It really is quite bizarre.
Yeah, it's Dakota. Would you like to?
No, I was just gonna say, it reminds me of this story someone went to tell me. They found out I was into these things, so they went to go tell me this story where they would just go with their mother to do their weekly shopping, and all of a sudden, one of their bags was missing. Okay, Mom. It happened week after week after week. Then all of a sudden, there was a house fire, and of course, the mother, being the mother figure, blaming on the kids being absent-minded. The firemen went to go into the house. Part of the wall went down, and sure enough, there were several bags of groceries inside the wall.
Well, that's
Yeah, they don't get, their aiming is horrendously bad. And I know of TV remotes that have appeared and been found in cavity walls, which, you know, there's no way a child could hide something in there.
It's actually fascinating because I've got a relative that he's got a spirit in his house. He doesn't really do him any harm, but the spirit likes to take things.
Yeah.
And it's always happening with the house keys. They'll disappear,
Mm-hmm.
and then like 3 months later they'll reappear like up the stairs, and he's the only person in the house. And it makes you wonder. Inside your walls, there could be large quantities there, like sky remotes and knives and pens, and it's actually another thing that would actually like to ask about. And then, if you want to go, do you have a question after me? Because we could ask some people in the chat. But you were talking about the tones.
That's actually what I was wanting to get into next.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, like, these tones. Now, I noticed in the book it talks about how the Catholic Church, for instance, had banned certain tones because it made people feel a strange way. Plus, it was known as the devil's tones because it opened up realms. Could you tell us a wee bit about
that? First of all, you know, whenever we talk about the devil and things like that, we should address that today we have this idea of demons, because of what religion has made them into. The demons of old, they were actually something that helped you. They were the guardian angel, if you like, that suggesting spirit that whispered into your ear, which was also known as your genius. So if you were good with the arts or whatever the case may be, then you listened to your genius, which was always this thing that lived outside of you and guided you along your life, which in itself, when we trace it back, is nothing more than jinn and everything else. Yeah. But anyway, the idea that these, I forgot the question now, I was rambling.
I was asking about the tones. The church tones and how the Catholic Church had banned them and stuff. Yeah.
And the tones themselves, they can be exceptionally effective. Now, there was a university, Princeton University, came to Ireland and found that a majority of our passage chambers were tuned to 110 hertz.
Yes.
And that in itself is a very, very low frequency. Now, the earliest imagery that we have of these ancient stone structures, we believe, is found as a carving on an old monastery wall down in County Offaly, and this shows heads in the peaks of this particular chamber with their mouths open. They're producing a tone, and from the center of this passage chamber, from the center of the Celtic cross, which effectively it is, a serpent is untwining from the center. So these particular places were activated not only with sound, but they were also activated with light. That was very, there were 3 particular things. I'm not going into the third one now because I'm writing that in my next book, The Fruit of the Gods. But yes, there were 3 particular things that were necessary to open that particular doorway. Now, the design of the passage chambers was later mimicked, and in fact, the medieval abbeys and cathedrals of old were also designed in the same style of format, and also orientated for the rising sun, and that was very, very important. And in fact, the Vatican, when the basilica was completed, it has become one of the largest residence chambers in the world, and it's exceptionally powerful. And those Gregorian chants, of course, can cause havoc if you're using the right ones. I had the opportunity several years back, before the lockdowns, of being in Scotland, and I was at a Templar church. And because Templars were very well aware of this particular phenomenon, and I wondered in the construction of their building, did they also tune into these particular frequencies. And I have to say, after running the tests, yes, they damn well did.
Yeah.
We got to experience it ourselves.
Out of curiosity, it wasn't Rosalind Chapel, was it?
No, it was not.
Because I know that Rosalind Chapel,
Rosalind Chapel has the symbolism there. It has the symbolism of the rose window, which is when these particular places are activated. Yes. You also have these sub chambers underneath, and you also have the stonemason's pillar, which has a large serpent on it, and going downward, indicating the chamber underneath. So again, resonance chambers tend to open those doorways, along with a few other things.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It makes you wonder, where does that open a doorway up to? What dimension does that take you to?
Yeah, the evidence would suggest that it is opening up to this place of nothing. Yes. That's where the communication comes through, and they manifest at the doorway. The Oracle of Delphi in Greece is one of those particular instances, and where we find rocks, caves, giant serpents, and of course the oracle, who gives over the information to the kings and priests who were coming looking for the information. But there were two different types of entities there, and one was known or was identified as being something like what we would associate as being Pan. But I wasn't so much interested in that one. I was interested in the other one, which was known as the Word. And that particular style of entity are the ones who have been creating the problems all along for us.
Yes. Dakota, would you like to?
Going into the subject of tones, before we went on air, we were kind of starting to dip into the CE5 tones, and you kind of acted like you had some pretty powerful opinions about those. So can you share that with us?
CE5, you need to be very, very careful with CE5, because again, you're going into the hook and bait. The flashy light is your hook. By the time you've passed your 20 seconds, you're baited. Those things are already on the ground. They're not in the sky. That is the deception. There was some research that was done in the Indiana University back in the 1970s, which predates the CE5 and Stephen Greer's work. And these students wanted to make contact, and they used flashlights and everything else, and they made contact with these lights in the sky. But they weren't ready for what else happened. Because at that particular time, there was other phenomena that began to occur, which after making contact with these nocturnal lights, these other things began to appear, these shadows within their bedrooms, which tracked them back to their very homes. The same thing happened to the scientists at the Livermore laboratories. The phenomena was appearing back at their homes as well. So it's very easy to draw this stuff back. This is not bebop from Mars. This is something that's here and has been here for a very, very long time. And it started producing for the students anyway, it started producing these rapping sounds, which I've also experienced, especially on stone walls. They can be very, very loud. Disembodied voices, physical attacks by unseen entities, etc., etc., etc. And it led on to a point where they actually had to stop the phenomena, or they had to stop the interaction. Like the Livermore laboratories, they had to cease and desist. Because it was getting too crazy. So the likes of CE5, we need to be very, very careful. We need to challenge what is coming through, and that I've had a very, very close encounter in the United States up in the high desert by using something of the same phenomena. But I was very aware that was the deception. The light was the deception, which was very close. I was very aware that whatever it was already on the ground and was swarming behind us. So once we had finished with that particular light phenomena, we were leaving, and and left the phenomena behind.
It's quite interesting you said about the scientists that experienced this, because I'm sure it was in the book that said his wife that was lying next to him in the bed experienced the exact same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I mean, that's just crazy. It makes you wonder. Yeah, maybe there is ETs, but maybe there is something darker that's always working.
I have no problem in accepting life on other planets. What I do have the problem with is understanding our mythology and folklore, and in which we can also, back at the turn of the 19th century, have instances where we have cylinders that are appearing above sacred stone circles, which look like and are labeled as a ghost train because of the long silver cylinder with windows on the side. Now, for anyone in ufology, they'll understand that as being one of those cylinders.
Yeah.
But this is something that's been going on not since someone crashed. And in fact, I find it quite hilarious that we've got someone with the idea of a flying saucer coming across the Gulf of space and then crashing in New Mexico. It sounds like, you've got this great piece of technology, and then you give it over to that silly dog from the cartoons. I can't remember, Muttley, to land thing. It makes no sense whatsoever. But these things have been going on for thousands and thousands of years. The research is there supporting it, and there are a lot of good researchers out there that are also preaching this as well. And Jacques Vallée wrote a book in which he draws some light onto this phenomena back into BC times, which a lot of this strange aerial phenomena was appearing.
It's quite interesting you say that, because as going back, manuscripts going back to like battles in the skies that's been cited, but it makes you wonder. And I know I'm going to use this. The US government will just pick them and the UK government. They are bad. They probably do have back engineered stuff. Yeah, but then it makes you wonder, these things that are contacting you, whoever they are, maybe they're not aliens, maybe they're something else, are giving them technology. Well, to them,
they do, of course. Yeah. In fact, I have proof of the, for instance, just one instance of the Douglas Aeronautics Company in 1968. They were absorbed by Boeing, of course, in 1997. But in 1968, they were using, and they were sponsored by the company to use Ouija boards to contact aliens to get advanced engine designs. And I have the details of what was going on. And there were red flags all the way through it. I was going red flag, red flag, red flag, but they just didn't see it. The contradictions that they were getting through this was phenomenal, and a various set of topics that tended to be covered was also the same topics that was covered back in the Oracle of Delphi in ancient Greece, in which these things were coming forward, and they were sharing information on sociology, government, economics, warfare, crime, medicine, etc., etc., etc. So, I'm deeply concerned that we do see suggestions and evidence to suggest that there are powers that be that are in contact with these things. And when especially when we cross-reference and look at what is appearing within the negative magnetic anomalies around the world, we tend to see that I think it's 75% of the world's top suicide locations appears in negative magnetic anomalies. Something is drawing people there for this end of life event.
That's actually real interesting you say that, because there was the bit in the book that I found so interesting. The parts of Europe with World War I and World War II was the blood that was spilled there, the energy, the bad energy that's there.
It's phenomenal. Yeah, absolutely phenomenal. And we also find that 70% of the world's weapons development labs and storage areas also appear in negative magnetic anomalies. And we refer back to the Douglas Aeronautics crew who were contacting something beyond, looking at advancements within technology. At what price? The price we can see throughout history is spilt blood.
It makes you wonder, like you had the CIA with MK Ultra, but then you had, see, these entities are going back to the void, to say the blackness, which is the Akasha records. Well, they'll have all the knowledge in there. There could be knowledge in there for billions and billions of years of civilizations in there.
Yes.
So they could easily just take something out of there, say US government, British government, whoever they are, say, well, I'll give you this, but I want something in return. Yes.
Yeah. Pretty much. And you know, I was given a warning when I wrote one of my other books, the Influence, which looks at how these beings can affect us on a biological level. And I remember then getting this warning, which I shan't go into about how I got it, but needless to say, it was along the same lines as a medium would, in which I was told, don't become too bright or they see you. Now, I didn't know what that meant at the time, but later on, there was a series of experiments that were conducted in California and within the paranormal. And these experiments went global with EVP, electrical voice phenomena. And the same question was being asked time and time again, how do you see us? And it came back time and time again as light.
Right.
So the warning, whenever I wrote the book initially, don't become too bright or they see you. That is how I've lived my life.
That is fascinating. Dakota, do you have anything you want to say? Is there any questions in the chat you would like to ask Barry guys in the chat? Could you start putting them up now, Dakota?
Yeah, I find it funny that that's a message that keeps coming through, is that don't become too bright. We're actually kind of working on a UFO contactee documentary, and the name that kept coming through for it that just kind of stuck, that sounded, had like a nice ring to it, was We Are Light. And I was like, now that you say that, I was like, okay, am I going to be putting people in danger here by doing this?
Yeah, bear in mind, not all light is good for you.
Yeah.
Very true. So, shall we try to get some questions out of the chat there, Chris?
Yes, please, guys. Is there any questions you would like to ask Barry, guys? Oh, there's Paranormal World. What's that? Right, here we go. I'll bring that up for you. Oh, did you press that at the same time? There you go.
Apparently,
Barry, do you think it is important to expect the beings and anything on how to connect more safely? That's from Paranormal World Investigators.
Challenged when the information starts coming through, be very diligent and maintaining detailed accounts of what is being given to you, whether it be impression, whether it be through a Ouija board session, whether it be through EVP, whether it be through a medium. If the information is coming through, write it down, keep a record of it, and give it time. Good science begins with observation. Watch what's coming through, listen to what's coming through, and from that, you will start to see small discrepancies. Work on those. And if that is positive in nature, it will not mind the question. But you can be sure, as there's an ass on a duck, that the moment you start questioning that, they will hightail it out of there.
Here is I would say, an easy question, but then again, it might be a hard question from the Simply I'll show. Is there life after death? What's your thoughts on
that? Do I believe that the spirit goes somewhere? Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
Where that goes, I have no idea. But what I believe is that, and this is something I put through in the book, is that everything that we're in communication with, everything, is not spirit. Spirit is gone. It's moved on.
Yeah.
We do not communicate with spirit. We are communicating with that other aspect, the soul. That's what we're communicating with. That's why it has access to the Akashic records, to the information beforehand, which is why they give us some information on I'm great Auntie Bertha, and here's some information about, and this is how it knows, because it's drawing from that well of information.
That's so interesting, that, because it's got knowledge, it's got everything in that realm. It knows everything, the answer to everything.
Not everything.
Yeah.
Future events it struggles with, and that's why we tend not to see a lot of information coming through about the future, and especially with technology, because in that they can only communicate on what has already existed. They can't communicate on what has yet to be invented.
There is a question from Dobie.
All right, Barry, do you think that some people don't understand they have died and need help? That's the question there.
That in itself, again, we're of a strong belief system that the spirit goes, it knows exactly where it's going. At point of death, it's gone. What we're dealing with is the soul, and the soul retracts back to that other place. The deception that's involved with that is phenomenal. They do not want to go back. They will try whatever they can to get back to here. They can't stay here indefinitely.
No.
But if they do manage to latch on, oppression, that will help delay the situation, and attachment. But of course, the ultimate game is whoever owns the body wins. So getting inside is the ultimate goal. To remain here as long as possible. And there are techniques in which that particular shadow soul, we use the both terminology to describe this phenomena. There are occasions and esoteric practices in which at point when the practitioner is in the process of going through the last stages of death, they can transfer the soul to a younger body. And that in itself, that's a horrific thing to do. But during that particular process, they tend to aim for children, especially males, within their own lineage, and not more than 10 years of age. And the attachment, the agreement can be as simple as taking a pencil and saying, "Here, kid, this is for you." The child doesn't know. It takes the pen or it takes the pencil. That's it. That the deal has been made. On an esoteric practice at point of death, then that soul will migrate to the child. And when that happens, this particular oppression will begin trying and infuse its wills and wishes on the boy. And that can create all sorts of turmoil, because you've got one soul inside fighting for dominance over this other one trying to get in. And so you can understand the huge competition that goes on with that. And in fact, I think we saw something in that within Aleister Crowley.
Yeah.
The cults within the UK. I think he did that with his own son.
Barry, do you think, that's a question for me, do you think that we've always got these dark beings, whoever they are, in the blackness and in the depths of the darkness? Do you think that there's other beings that mean us well, that want to look after us? Because I noticed you did mention that in the book, that there was another type of beings. Can you tell us anything about
that? We would like to think that there is a positive gang out there. And I have to say, I have encountered that particular positive nature. In fact, a lot of this work couldn't have been done without it. yes, there is a positive aspect to it, and there are some of these things on beyond that have the possibility to evolve somewhat. But again, you gotta test it every time. Do not become complacent.
Yeah.
Everything has to be tested.
It's quite interesting that you say that, because I know people that dabble with the Ouija board, the spirit board, or whatever people want to call it, and they'll be doing it, and these people are like ghost hunters, like they know what they're doing and stuff like that. I won't touch one of them. I would never touch one of them, because I see a board like that as a gateway, as a doorway. I would never touch anything like that. But they've told me, like, oh, my grandfather came through and he told me such and such, and he told me this, and he loves me and stuff. But then it makes me wonder if it is that the soul thing. It knows everything. It knows all the knowledge.
Yeah. Deception at the highest amount. Now, the thing is, I wouldn't get lost too much on the idea of the Ouija board, because that in itself is about intent. Yeah. Now, when you lift a voice recorder and you say, "Is there anyone there? Can you come forward to me?" That intent is there. You have the potential of opening that doorway to allow that to happen. The problem is with the Ouija board, you've got 4 people on it, which now magnifies the intent times 4. But the problem is, you see, within today's paranormal investigating, we rarely think about that, and the idea that when these doors open, we may not get anything at that particular occasion, and then suddenly we leave, we pack up everything and go. We don't close the door. But 2 days later, 2 weeks later, 2 months later, something may actually come through to that because we left the door open. We rarely close the door these days.
Yeah. It's like when you get paranormal investigators, and I watch it on TV and I'm like, oh no, don't do it. And you know in yourself they shouldn't do it. They'll go to a location and they'll be like, take my energy. I give you permission to take my energy. And you're like, oh no. Yeah. And that's basically giving permission to whatever entity, whatever it is. So it looks at you and it thinks, oh, this has got to be fun. So Dakota, do you have any other news you want to tell, or there's no other questions in the chat?
No, I do have one little bit to mention about the documentary. If you go onto the Bald and Bonkers website, we are now accepting open submissions for people to tell us their thoughts, or if they have their own experiences, they can send that to us as well so we can take a look at it. We are going to try to start moving forward with production, so that way we have so much material that's coming through this show, and I noticed that some people are making fun of the faces I'm making, but that's another story. True. Anyway.
Yeah, but
we want to try to get as many people on this as possible, so feel free to come by. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out.
Yeah. But honestly, guys, please go to Amazon. All the links will be below for Barry's book. Honestly, it's an absolute fascinating read, and I can't wait for that other book that you're telling us you're working on now. When's that coming out?
I'm hopefully going to have that ready by the end of the year, and it's called The Fruit of the Gods. But if anyone doesn't like reading, there's an audio version of The Deception of Gods and Men, which I have to say I've listened to myself and thought it was great.
Yeah. So Barry, would you like any links that you would like to? Would you like anywhere to go, like Twitter or anywhere like that? Would you like to?
People can find me on Facebook, and a list of my documentaries and other books can be found on charmstealer.com.
Yeah. Well, there you go, Dakota. Shall we end the show and we'll talk to you behind the scenes, Barry?
All right, there we go. Thank you again so much for coming on. Thank you, everybody, for watching this again. If you want to check out Barry's book, the link is in the description.
Yes.
I highly recommend it. It's utterly fascinating. I plot through it throughout this week. So anyway, much love. Stay safe. Catch you on the flip side.
Catch you later, guys.